I used to use it regularly to go and see the matches that I was interested in on Court 1. I won't go there now. I won't go anywhere near.
Cliff Richard was once the face of British pop, the teenage heartthrob with the slick hair and smooth voice. He sold millions of records, had a clean image, and stayed away from scandals. People loved him, not just for his music, but for how kind and humble he always seemed. For decades, Cliff was a constant in the spotlight, but then his career took a sharp turn. It wasn't age, it wasn't a fading voice. It was something much darker. One moment changed everything. One false allegation that shook his world, and Richard's life was never the same after. Join us as we reveal the truth behind his fall from the spotlight and uncover what really happened to Cliff Richard's legacy. The early years. Cliff Richard was born as Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940, in Lucknow, British India. His father worked as a catering manager for the Indian Railways, while his mother was Dorothy Marie Daisley. The family lived a modest life in Maqbara, near Hazratganj's main shopping area. Cliff wasn't an only child. He had 3 sisters, Joan, Jackie, and Donna. His grandmother also worked as a dormitory matron at a girls' school. As India went through political change, especially after the violence of Direct Action Day, the Webbs decided it was time to leave. In 1948, just after India gained independence, they took a 3-week sea journey to Britain. They moved from a comfortable flat in India to a small house in Carshalton, Surrey. The change was huge. Young Harry started school at Stanley Park Juniors. Later, when his father got a new job in Enfield, the family lived with relatives in Waltham Cross. Eventually, in 1950, they got a council house in Cheshunt. That became their home. Cliff went to Cheshunt Secondary Modern School and even stayed past the regular age to take exams. He passed English literature and then started working as a filing clerk at Atlas Lamps. But music was calling. When Cliff turned 16, his father bought him a guitar. That gift changed everything. Soon, he joined a school music group called the Quintones. After that, he performed with the Dick Teague Skiffle Group. This was the beginning of something big. A new name, a new sound. In 1958, Harry Webb became the lead singer of a rock and roll band called the Drifters. Not to be confused with the American group, but before their big debut, he needed a stage name. Cliff was chosen because it sounded like Cliff Face, something strong and rocky. The last name Richard was added as a tribute to his music hero, Little Richard. Cliff Richard and the Drifters had their first big show at the Regal Ballroom in Derbyshire. The group included Cliff on vocals, Ian Samwell on guitar, Terry Smart on drums, and Norman Mitham on rhythm guitar. Though these members didn't stay long, Samwell went on to write songs for Cliff's future hits. Their big break came through music producer Norrie Paramore. Cliff was first offered a song called Schoolboy Crush, but it was the B-side, Move It, that got everyone's attention. Samwell had actually written Move It on a bus ride to Cliff's house. When TV producer Jack Good heard it, he insisted it be played on his show Oh Boy instead of the A-side. Cliff later said in an interview with NME in September 1958, "It's wonderful to be going on TV for the first time, but I feel so nervous that I don't know what to do. I shaved my sideburns off last night." Jack Good said it would make me look more original. Move It became a hit and reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. Even John Lennon later said it was the first real British rock record. Big hits, big films, and bigger fame. In the beginning, Cliff was seen as Britain's answer to Elvis. He had the look, the style, and the stage presence. He dressed like a rocker, didn't smile much on stage, and gave off a cool attitude. His early singles like High Class Baby, Livin' Lovin' Doll, and Mean Streak kept his rock image alive. But then came Living Doll. This softer song was a huge hit. and became Cliff's first #1 single. It also marked the beginning of his famous partnership with the Shadows. The group had to change their name from the Drifters to the Shadows due to legal issues with the American band. Though they started as his backing group, the Shadows became stars themselves. They recorded their own music and had hits like Apache. Sometimes their songs even beat Cliff's on the charts. Cliff didn't just make records. He was also acting. His first film was Serious Charge, but he became best known for The Young Ones, Summer Holiday, and Wonderful Life. These musicals were so popular that Cliff was named the #1 box office star in Britain in both 1962 and 1963. Even the comedy show The Young Ones in the 1980s took its name from Cliff's movie. His single, The Young Ones, sold over 1 million copies in the UK, becoming his best-selling hit. At that point, Cliff Richard wasn't just a pop singer, he was a household name. New sounds, new challenges. In 1961, EMI Records threw Cliff a 21st birthday party. It was a big moment. Photos from the celebration were used for his album 21 Today. Even though drummer Tony Meehan had left the Shadows by then, he showed up to celebrate. At live shows, the Shadows played their own set first. Then, they joined Cliff for his part of the show. Albums like Live at the ABC, Kingston, 1962, capture that energy. As some band members left and new ones came in, Cliff kept going strong. He didn't stick to just rock. Cliff also recorded soft ballads, backed by the Norrie Paramore Orchestra. His first solo ballad single was When the Girl in Your Arms is the Girl in Your Heart. He followed this with covers like It's All in the Game and Constantly. In 1965, Cliff recorded in Nashville with Billy Sherrill. These sessions gave him another #1 hit with The Minute You're Gone and a #2 hit with Wind Me Up, Let Me Go. Even though Cliff had great success in the UK, things didn't work out the same in the US. He and the Shadows toured America in 1960 and even appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, but they never caught on there. To make matters worse, the Shadows' song Apache was a hit in the US, but through a copy by Danish guitarist Jørgen Ingman. Still, back in the UK, Cliff was everywhere. He was making music, starring in movies, and setting records. But despite the fame and fans, not every road stays smooth. A new era begins. In the early 1960s, Cliff Richard was one of Britain's biggest stars. But things started to change in 1964. The Beatles arrived, and the music world shifted. The new Mersey sound took over. While Cliff was still popular and had hits, his fame wasn't as huge as before. And in the US, he still didn't break through like other British acts. Even though he had 4 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1 year, most Americans didn't know his name. That same year, something very personal happened to Cliff. He became a born-again Christian. Though he was baptized as an Anglican earlier in life, faith hadn't played a big role before, but now it became central to who he was. It even made him question his career. Cliff once said he didn't want to be the kind of performer who had been called too sexy for TV or a crude exhibitionist. At one point, he even thought about quitting music to become a teacher, but his Christian friends convinced him to stay. They told him he didn't need to give up his music career. So Cliff found a balance. He continued recording pop songs with the Shadows, but also did Christian performances. He joined Billy Graham crusades and began to include Christian themes in his work. Even with this shift, Cliff still made chart history. His 1965 song, On My Word, broke his long run of 23 straight top 10 hits. But soon after, The Day I Met Marie in 1967 reminded fans that he could still make hits. And though he didn't win Eurovision in 1968, his song Congratulations became a #1 hit and a classic across Europe. But behind the scenes, he was still nervous. During the voting, Cliff even locked himself in the toilet because he couldn't handle the suspense. The television years and Eurovision again. In 1968, Cliff's longtime group, The Shadows, split up, but he didn't stop. In the 1970s, he was all over TV. He hosted It's Cliff Richard, which aired from 1970 to 1976. The show featured stars like Olivia Newton-John, Hank Marvin, and Una Stubbs. It was a big hit and helped Cliff stay visible even as music styles changed. In 1970, he also appeared on Pop Go the 60s, performing Bachelor Boy and Congratulations. A few years later, he made a TV comedy film, The Case, where he did his first duet with a female artist. Again, Olivia Newton-John. His concerts were still popular, and he even released Cliff Live in Japan, 1972. Cliff also returned to Eurovision in 1973 with Power to All Our Friends. The song placed third. This time, though, his nerves got the best of him. He took Valium to stay calm, and his manager had trouble waking him up for the show. In 1975, he released Honky Tonk Angel, not knowing the phrase referred to prostitutes in southern U.S. slang. When someone told him, Cliff was horrified. He immediately asked EMI to pull the song. Even though it was expected to sell well, Cliff didn't want to be part of it. EMI agreed. Only about 1,000 copies were ever pressed. Cliff stood by his beliefs, even if it cost him sales. But all of that was about to change, because by 1976, Cliff was ready for a bold return to rock. The comeback. In 1976, Cliff's career took a new turn. His producer and friend Bruce Welch helped him reinvent himself as a rock artist. The album I'm Nearly Famous brought Cliff back in a big way. It included the hit Devil Woman, a track with a bold sound that became his first big success in the U.S. There was also a touching ballad, Miss Unites. Music critics and fans were excited. Melody Maker even called it Cliff's Renaissance. Big artists like Elton John, Eric Clapton, and Jimmy Page wore I'm Nearly Famous badges. They were happy to see their childhood idol making a comeback. Still, Cliff didn't forget his faith. He released Christian songs alongside his rock hits. In 1978, his album Small Corners had the song Yes, He Lives. On December 31st, 1976, he performed his latest single, Hey, Mr. Dreammaker, on the BBC's A Jubilee of Music show. A few years later, in 1979, Cliff had another major hit. We Don't Talk Anymore topped the UK charts and reached number 7 in the US. Brian Ferry even added backing vocals. The song became Cliff's biggest worldwide hit, selling nearly 5 million copies. With this, Cliff achieved something rare. He had hits in the US in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and now the 80s. Songs like Carrie, Dreamin', and Suddenly, with Olivia Newton-John, followed. He was back in the US charts, and strong in the UK too. In 1980, he officially changed his name from Harry Roger Webb to Cliff Richard. That same year, Queen Elizabeth II honored him with an OBE, Officer of the Order of the British Empire, for his work in music and charity. But behind the awards and applause, Cliff's private world told a different story, one filled with deep family ties and emotional struggles. The weight of family and femme. Cliff Richard's personal life was shaped early on by family responsibility and sudden loss. In 1961, his father, Roger Webb, died at the age of 56. Cliff later admitted, "My father died very young. He missed the best parts of my career. When my father was sick, we became very close." This loss left a deep mark on him. After his father's death, Cliff became the central figure in his family. His mother, Dorothy, along with his 3 sisters, leaned on him for support. Dorothy later battled Alzheimer's for 10 years before passing away in 2007 at the age of 87. In a 2006 interview, Cliff spoke openly about the emotional toll this took on him and his sisters. It wasn't easy, but they faced it together. Even with the weight of stardom, Cliff tried to be there for his loved ones. He wasn't just a celebrity. He was a son, a brother, and an uncle. In 1988, his nephew Philip Harrison spent months in a children's hospital. Cliff helped raise money for the hospital and said he had a terrible time, but the hospital saved his life. Behind the fame, Cliff remained deeply connected to his family. But as he grew more famous, relationships of the heart became harder to hold on to. Love that couldn't last. Cliff Richard never married, but he did fall in love, more than once. In 1961, he had a serious relationship with Australian dancer Delia Wicks. They had been dating for 18 months when Cliff wrote her a letter. In it, he said, "Being a pop singer, I have to give up one priceless thing, the right to any lasting relationship with any special girl." He made it clear that his career, along with caring for his family after his father's death, came first. Cliff urged her to find someone who is free to love you as you deserve to be loved. It was a hard decision. After Delia passed away in 2010, her brother said she had been devastated by the breakup, but always described Cliff as a very pleasant man. After Delia, Cliff had a short romance with actress Una Stubbs. Then later, he became very close to dancer Jackie Irving. He once said she was utterly beautiful, and for a time they were inseparable. But that too didn't lead to marriage. Jackie later married singer Adam Faith. In the 1980s, Cliff thought seriously about proposing to tennis champion Sue Barker. He first met her in 1982 when she was just 25. The two were often seen holding hands and cuddling at Wimbledon. Cliff once said, "If marriage comes on the horizon, I shall relish it." But by 1984, Sue had moved on to another relationship. Cliff stayed kind, saying, "We have a mutual respect for each other, and that means a lot to me." When asked later why he never married, Cliff said, "Marriage is a big commitment, and being an artist consumes a great deal of time." He also shared that he once had feelings for Olivia Newton-John, but she was already engaged at the time. "I'm afraid I lost the chance," he admitted. Despite being a bachelor, Cliff never lived alone for long, and there were always whispers about his private life. Rumors, faith, and friendship. Cliff Richard's personal choices and lifestyle made people talk. For years, there were rumors about his sexuality. Some believed that because he didn't marry, he must be hiding something. But Cliff always spoke clearly about it. In the late 1970s, he said, "It's untrue. People are very unfair with their criticism and their judgments. I've had girlfriends, but people seem to think that if a bloke doesn't sleep around, he must be gay." In 1992, when asked if he had ever wondered if he might be gay, he replied, "No." He explained, "Even if I got married tomorrow, there would be a group of people who would believe what they wanted to believe." Throughout his life, Cliff stood by his values. He said, "Marriage is a very special thing to me. I'm certainly not going to do it just to make other people feel satisfied." Instead of marriage, Cliff focused on close friendships. He lived for many years with his manager Bill Latham, Bill's mother, and later even Bill's girlfriend Jill. Cliff once described them as his second family. In 2001, Cliff became close friends with John McKellen, a former missionary from America. By 2008, John was helping manage Cliff's properties. Cliff said, "John and I have over time struck up a close friendship. He has also become a companion, which is great because I don't like living alone." His friendships ran deep. He remained a trusted friend of broadcaster Gloria Hunniford and was one of the few people who knew that her daughter, Karen Keating, was battling cancer. When she passed in 2004, Cliff performed Miss U nights at her funeral. In 1999, when TV presenter Jill Dando was murdered, Cliff said the loss shook his faith. "I was really angry with God," he admitted. "It shook me rigid, but even in pain, he stayed true to his beliefs." He often said that while he never had a family of his own, he never felt alone. "My good friends have kept me from feeling lonely," he shared in a 2002 interview with David Frost. And his life wasn't only based in the UK. A life between countries. Cliff Richard spent decades in the spotlight, but by 2010, he made a big change. He confirmed that he was no longer a resident of the UK. He became a citizen of Barbados, though he added, "I will always be British and proud of it." Over the years, he had invested in property and winemaking in Portugal too. He loved spending time between both places. Portugal even honored him in 2006 with the title Commander of the Order of Prince Henry for his 40 years of involvement in the country. In his 2008 autobiography, Cliff showed a more open side. He wrote that his views had changed over time. He called on the Church of England to show support for people in same-sex marriages. "I believe people are going to be judged for what they are," he wrote. "Commitment is the issue. I'm not going to judge. I'll leave that to God." Cliff's views became more accepting, even though he had spent his whole life being judged. Whether it was about his bachelor status, his friendships, or his faith, he always tried to live honestly. He also shared a special bond with singer and TV icon Cilla Black. In the 2000s, they were often seen together in Marbella, Miami, and at Wimbledon. After her death in 2015, Cliff said, "She was a very special person, and I have lost a very wonderful friend." At her funeral, he sang "Faithful One" as a final tribute. When asked in 2013 if he regretted not starting a family, Cliff said no. He explained, "My 3 sisters have children, and I've made sure I've always played a part in their lives." He believed that being single allowed him to give more to his career and family. "I think I would have been a good father," he said, "but I wouldn't have it any other way." And through it all, loss, love, pressure, and praise, Cliff Richard remained devoted to what mattered most: his career, his faith, and the people he loved. But just when it seemed like Cliff had weathered every storm, a new and unexpected blow came from the past. A single accusation, decades old, would turn his world upside down. A shocking raid and a false rumor. In August 2014, Cliff Richard's quiet life took a painful turn. Police suddenly searched his Berkshire apartment after a claim was made against him. The accusation said he had assaulted a young boy during a Christian rally in 1985. That rally was led by preacher Billy Graham at Bramall Lane Stadium. Cliff had performed there in front of thousands and was described in the program as Britain's leading Christian ambassador. The raid shocked everyone, including Cliff himself. He wasn't even in the UK when it happened. He was in Portugal, where he often spent his summers. The police had no contact with him before the search. They entered his home, stayed for 5 hours, and left with items. The search was done without warning, and strangely, the press already knew about it. Helicopters flew over his property, and the BBC broadcasted the raid live. Cliff broke his silence quickly. In a statement, he said, "The allegations are completely false. I have known of these rumors for months, but did not want to give them any attention. However, after the police came to my apartment today, I will fully cooperate." The police confirmed that no arrest had been made, and Cliff wasn't present at the time. Still, the damage was done. And what made things worse, this raid wasn't even part of Operation U-Tree, which had been launched after the Jimmy Savile scandal. Cliff's name was out there, and the world was watching. But this was just the beginning, because what came next raised even more questions. The media firestorm and public backlash. After the search, Cliff's life became a media storm. Reporters camped outside his home. Helicopters flew overhead, and the BBC led the charge, broadcasting every detail, even showing police taking items out of his home. Many were outraged. How could this happen to someone who hadn't even been arrested? Cliff canceled many of his plans. He skipped his yearly visit to the US Open tennis tournament. He turned down a special honor in his adopted home city of Albufeira, Portugal. He also canceled an appearance at Canterbury Cathedral, saying he didn't want the event to be overshadowed by the false allegation. Soon after, Cliff voluntarily returned to the UK to meet with police. He was never arrested or charged, but the press didn't back off. The BBC had received a tip from someone connected to the case. They pressured the police to give them details. Fearing leaks, the police told them when the search would happen. Later, Cliff said, "I've been hung out like live bait." Though the law says everyone is innocent until proven guilty, in the eyes of the public, suspicion alone caused major harm. This wasn't just about one man's pain. Many people, including legal experts, spoke out. Lord MacDonald, the former director of public prosecutions, called the police's behavior completely disreputable. And Cliff? He had no idea how far this would go, or how long it would last. The legal battle for justice. In 2016, after nearly 2 years of investigation, the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, finally announced there was not enough evidence to charge Cliff with anything. The claims had come from 4 men and dated between 1958 and 1983. But still, there was no proof. The case was dropped. Cliff said he was obviously thrilled the accusations had ended. But he added, "My reputation will not be fully cleared. The CPS only says insufficient evidence." How can there be evidence for something that never happened? That same year, South Yorkshire Police apologized to him. They admitted they had handled the case poorly. They had also violated his privacy. An independent review confirmed this. The police had broken guidelines by leaking information to the press. It was later discovered that during this time, a man had tried to blackmail Cliff. He had threatened to spread false stories unless he was paid. That man was arrested, but the damage was already done. Cliff's name had been dragged through the mud. He had been investigated, judged, and humiliated, all without ever being charged. So, he decided to fight back. In 2016, Cliff took legal action against both the police and the BBC. The police settled and paid him £400,000. The real courtroom battle, though, was with the BBC, and it made headlines around the world. The courtroom victory and a new chapter. In April 2018, Cliff Richard stood in a UK courtroom and gave evidence. He spoke for more than an hour about how the BBC's live coverage had hurt him deeply. His lawyer said the BBC had gone too far and ignored his right to privacy. The BBC claimed they had the right to report on police investigations, but the court disagreed. The judge said that while the public has the right to know that abuse investigations are happening, they don't need to know the names of the people involved unless they are charged. The court also found that the BBC had used private information in the wrong way. They had chased the story using a tip from a confidential source. They had even been told by police that the evidence wasn't strong, but they broadcasted everything anyway. The judge said the BBC went in for an invasion of Sir Cliff's privacy rights in a big way. In July 2018, Cliff Richard won the case. He was awarded £210,000 in damages. The BBC didn't appeal. They apologized publicly, admitting that they had caused him great distress. The Guardian reported the case had cost the BBC around £1.9 million. The court's decision became an important moment in media law. It showed that being famous doesn't take away your right to privacy. The court ruled clearly, just because something is true doesn't mean it should be broadcast. Cliff had fought for his name, and he won. But as he later said, the damage to his life and image was something no court could fully repair. Still, after everything, he stood tall and stayed strong in his words. "I'm not going to let false claims define me." Do you believe Cliff Richard's name and legacy can ever fully recover from something he was never even charged for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.